G'day, lads. Welcome back.
How are we? Good to be here.
Yeah,
good to see you, boys.
Yeah, it's been a bit of time. We've had a little bit going on, so it's good to get back and speak to you guys.
Yeah, apologies for the last one where I was down the beach and there's a little bit of wind effect. I apologise for that in the longevity episode, but Smithy edited it out perfectly.
It's best he could. G'day, Mick.
How are we, guys? Good to be back. Looking forward to today.
Yeah, what's on the agenda today?
Yeah, this is we've got Zone 2 today. This has been a bit of a darling of the biohacking longevity community. We did our last podcast on longevity, and a lot of the experts talk about Zone 2 cardio. So we wanted to talk about it, touch on our experiences and the bits and pieces that we've done with it. It's it's quite interesting. It got much maligned there for a little while as being sort of too easy. You know, it wasn't hard enough. You weren't going hard enough. But there's a range of benefits that we'll discuss today. Yeah. But
before we go into it,
interesting.
Can I just have a shout out to one of our listeners, an old high school friend who is a long distance runner, marathon runner, did little athletics as a youngster. Cara, she's been listening to us from day one, listens to every episode, sends me messages with a bit of feedback every now and then, and is learning a lot. So thanks, Cara, for listening.
Beautiful.
Yeah, she'll be into this one too because she still runs. She's still fit as a fiddle. So yeah, she'll probably get a bit out of this one.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting hearing from listeners. Talked about my mate that listens.
Yeah,
he'd be big on Zone 2 as well. He's the same.
I think it's
run marathons.
Quite when you say
very fit man.
When you say it's a darling of the fitness industry sort of thing
at the moment,
but it also probably goes back a bit with the running world. Like the running world's probably been across this. Like your serious long distance runners have been across this as part of their training regime for a long, long time.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting, those runners and those people. So that Zone 2, and we'll talk about how you get to that Zone 2. And I think we need to understand a bit of the energy systems that go into those.
Yep.
Because going from sort of Zone 2 to Zone 3 is a bit of a metabolic shift. They talk about sort of heart rate zones, so it's often based on a heart rate zone, Zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sometimes 6. Depends on the literature you look at. But Zone 2... moving from Zone 1 to Zone 2, Zone 2 to Zone 3 is probably that metabolic shift and bits and pieces. But like you were saying, endurance athletes, and Mick can probably attest to this. I know I used to do it. There's a fella called Dr. Phil Maffetone. He was really big on it, running these long, slow distances to build the benefits of faster race pace. So probably a good one for all our endurance listeners out there.
Yeah, they got a saying, haven't they? Go slow to go faster.
Yeah, and this is definitely it. And Maffetone was really big on it, and he's coached a lot of very highly prominent people. Mark Allen, Mick, who you'll know in the triathlon scene, and he was maybe the pioneer of fat for fuel as a triathlete. You know. Back in the day, you used to smash glucose as much as you could past, probably 500 grams of carbohydrate. And then Maffetone as the coach and Mark Allen as the athlete, and then others jumped on board, were using this Zone 2 way back. And now it's sort of come back around and really big in the longevity circles. And we did touch on longevity as our last episode, so it's probably a good flow for us to go into this one.
But also, just for those people listening, it isn't just for your professional long distance runner. Yep. It is a great training method for your average Joe Blow trainer. Low impact. There is a longer duration, and as you said, it's actually quite ignored in general fitness terms because it's deceptively easy.
Yes.
So a 45-minute brisk fast walk is Zone 2 cardio.
Yeah.
But someone thinking that they go out for a 45-minute real fast walk is thinking, I'm not really going to do anything. I'm not going to achieve anything out of that.
Yep.
But you are probably going to achieve more doing that in terms of fat burning, calorie loss, even like your leg workout with the muscles in your legs compared to a long-distance run.
Yeah, they talk about EPOC exercise post-oxygen consumption, which is the effect of the exercise, but post the exercise, the metabolic needs, the oxygen intake increases after you exercise. So that rest period that you're having, your body's trying to get back to its homeostasis, pumps, more blood around the body, but you're not doing anything at time. The exercise is finished. So all of that good stuff after the exercise. But what you were touching on there reminded me to get back to our endurance friends. Their zone 2 might look different to someone who is a strength athlete, and that their zone 2 might be a brisk walk, whereas someone who's a trained athlete might be a jogging pace,
Yep.
and they often term zone 2 in relation to being able to have a conversation with someone. If you are out of breath and can't get out more than a sentence, you're probably the shift in your metabolic system. We could probably touch on energy systems now, has moved out of zone 2 to zone 3.
Let's get into zone 2 definition for dummies.
Yeah, let's do that.
For the average Joe Blow who's probably never heard of it, let's just explain it in a term that's simple to understand.
Yep. I guess to do that, if you want sort of the basic version, it would be zone 2 is where you can carry out a conversation and it's nice and easy. Once you get past that, I think you've moved into a different zone. But if you want to talk about the various zones, and they have different names, and they're usually early sports science based them on heart rate. So the zone 1, easy, is a nice warm up kind of zone. It's often called aerobic recovery. 50 to 60% of your heart rate, maximum heart rate. So that number 2 is kind of a flawed metric, but if you look at 220 minus your age, I'm 42, 220 minus 42.
176.
178. So theoretically, based on this, my maximum heart rate is 178. And then to get in sort of zone 1, 50% of that would be my zone 1. The easy, light, steady, often called the fat burning zone, zone 2. 60 to 70%, they call it aerobic threshold. And for me, that would be about 106 beats to 125 beats per minute. Sitting in that zone would be zone 2. And there's a lot of other ways that you can work out this zone 2. We'll talk about maybe the Maffetone method, the Maffetone method a bit later. But this is sort of generalized sort of sports science. And then you're moving to zone 3, aerobic, 70 to 80%, which would be sort of up to 142 beats a minute on my previous calculations. But really, a lot of the guys that are really big into it, they base it around the energy system. So it's difficult to use heart rate for a broad spectrum of people. But I like that definition of if you've gone past the zone of being able to have a conversation, you're out of zone 2.
And there's also the metric where you can actually like nose breathing. So if you can perform it
that's a good one.
by nose breathing for the majority of that duration,
if you have to rely on breathing through your mouth,
you're probably going too hard.
Yes.
So basically, we're talking about maintaining a certain lower heart rate over an extended period of time.
Yep.
That's your zone 2, yeah?
Yeah. We'll talk about dosage in a little bit, as in, what's a good, effective, minimal amount. But that 45 minutes is probably about when it kicks in. Yeah. So I guess, I don't know if anyone else wants to chip in there, but I want to go to energy systems and do a little bit about that, because I think that ties in with the clearing up some of the vagarities, new word I just invented, of the heart rate system, using that heart rate system. Yeah. Doesn't have to be so sciencey, I guess, but yeah.
Mick, you got anything, mate?
No, I think you so far we're sort of covering everything off pretty accurately in terms of when I'm structuring up probably 70 to 75% of my training in totality has been done in zone 2.
Yeah.
and it's like you said, a lot of those old school world champions in sort of endurance Ironman distances, Mark Allen and the likes. They really reinvented the wheel. There used to be a real emphasis put on threshold-based training, and that was the real stimulatory point of improvement. Whereas I think Mark Allen showed that anything over 20% of your training that was above that zone 2 range tended to lead towards injury and fatigue and all of these sorts of things. So, and even as you're stating, and I write this in most of my programs as a definition, is zone 2. Zone 2 run is what we call conversational pace. So you should be able to go out, run along with someone and maintain a full conversation with full sentences the whole way through. So, I guess the only other thing I would say about the heart rate component of that as well is that it certainly from my perspective in endurance sport, from a physiology standpoint, it's very accurate. As long as it's done through an appropriate threshold test to get to get an accurate indication of your maximum heart rate. So if we just use the metric of I think it's actually 221 minus the age, that's a basic formula that was derived to sort of give some direction. But if like common tests that we would have utilised in triathlon are like a 20-minute max power test. So you would jump on a stationary bike or go and ride on a flat road. You'd have your heart rate strap on, and you would ride as hard as you could ride for 20 minutes. And that would give you your personal maximum heart rate, which for some people is actually significantly more than what the basic formula indicates. And then for a run, you could do a max velocity run. You could go and run for 12 minutes at your max, and that would also allow for the sort of more accurate zones to be worked out. And I guess the thing about that is conducting those tests. It doesn't really matter, I guess, who you specifically are. The results will be based on your physiology. So all 4 of us could go and conduct that test. We could wire ourselves up to heart rate and all that sort of thing, and our maximum heart rates would all come out completely differently, which would allow for our own individual zones to then, be worked out, which is how I've structured up all my training for all the people I've coached over the last 15 years. And I'm a really big believer in getting away from this generic programming into physiology-specific, independent, individualised training programs. That's how we minimise injury and we maximise output.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's really good for definitely endurance athletes and whatnot. But like Rooster was saying, we can use this not being so scientific as, everyday training method of, 45 minutes of getting to that zone of not being a conversation. If it's not conversational, then we're going too hard. And it's often, in the fitness industry, if we're not going hard enough, you want to be maxing out. If you're not maxing out, you're not working out hard enough. And people often malign zone 2 for being too easy. And that's why I really like it. And it's great, especially if you're doing endurance training. You can get out with a partner. You can go on a long run for an hour and have a conversation. You're not blowing out. And that conversational zone might be different for different people. So people that aren't endurance athletes, it might just be a walk. It might be that going up a hill pushes you out of conversational pace. It's too hard, right? So yeah, it does vary for different people, and you can get really scientific about it. Yeah.
before you get into the science there, Dr. Fauci, the 220 minus your age thing, isn't there the that Maffetone formula? Is that different to that? Is that 180 minus your age, and then you get your percentage from that?
Yeah, so Maffetone bases his, I think he calls it maximal aerobic function. I don't think he likes to call it MAF because it sounds a bit like his name.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I thought that's how he initially designed it.
Yeah,
but anyway,
right.
180 minus your age.
And then you're looking around 65 to 75, depending on what you're reading. Percent.
He's sort of suggesting that never max out more than that number. So say if I go for a run, so what am I? 180 minus my age, 140. 42 minus 180, 138.
Yep.
Which, if you look at zone 3 for me, that starts at, if you went on those percentages that I talked about earlier, that would be 125. So it's sort of in a similar zone. He's got other metrics for it, as in if you are unfit, you add 5 beats per minute. If you're on medication or drugs or anything, you add 5. If you are fit, you take away 5. So if you look at 132 for me, take away 5, that gets me to 127, which is very close to the end of that 70% of max heart rate. So they're very similar numbers. So Maffetone sort of suggests that if you get to, and you need to have a metric, you need to have a heart rate monitor, and probably not the wrist ones. He talks about the chest strap being more accurate. So you run, initially it takes a lot, and it took a lot for me to get to a point where I could have a conversation or breathe through my nose. So if I got to a hill, I would definitely go above that zone. So if you hit that zone, he suggests pulling it back and walking. So I could get 400 meters out of my house, go up a little hill, and I'm walking. And initially it's quite frustrating. But 6 months in, and it does take a bit of work, you get to those zones and you are more efficient getting up a hill, and your heart rate doesn't go higher than outside of Maffetone's zone of zone 2. Yeah.
Is there a difference in the zones? I was listening to Peter Attia. He's one of the huge fanboys of Zone 2, and he talks about it all the time.
Yeah.
And he was sort of mentioning there's a cycling protocol for zones, and the cycling zones don't line up with sort of the Zone 2 zones. That's a terrible explanation, but he was essentially saying he does Zone 2 at 70 to 80%. Is that something that you guys have come across, or is he just doing his own thing there? Because he was sort of saying in cycling there are 7 zones, and Zone 2 that he uses equates to sort of Zone 3 in cycling if you use like a cycling computer or something like that. Is that something you guys have come across?
We'll let Mick go with that one.
No, it's not. I mean, look, there's a number of different people doing different things. That's definitely true. But I've always sort of just used the same sort of standard zones as I would with running. Although sometimes the metrics or the heart rate data can be slightly different depending on what comes out as the max heart rate for that particular test. So the standardized testing that we would use to ascertain max heart rate on the bike would be a functional threshold power test, which can be conducted over 20 minutes or 60 minutes. And then from there, it's obviously a percentage of that max heart rate to work out the zones. But no, I hadn't heard that, Matty. That's not something I've used anyway.
Yeah, maybe he's dealing with a fitter group or something like that. He was. I listened to an interesting conversation he had with a very high-level trainer for Tour de France athletes.
Ingo?
And yeah, it was, yeah.
Ingo San Miguel or
something like that. Yeah, a couple of really interesting things. He was saying those guys would spend about 24 hours a week in Zone 2.
San Milan.
Those elite level guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were using that 70 to 80%, I think. But maybe because they're elite athletes, it changes it, because they were going off blood lactate measurements, which is the scientific way of working out when you're changing over your energy systems, which maybe we won't get into. But
that was what I was going to touch on to answer your question there. Attia does a lot of muscle biopsies while he's doing it. He's doing VO2. He's getting his
He's a numbers guy.
Yeah. So he I think he used to be quite a good cyclist.
He's quite a high level cyclist. Yeah.
And he does a lot of swimming, and so his zone 2 is a little bit different, but he goes into those energy systems, and I suppose maybe I'll touch on them really quickly if I can. We probably need to understand them to get to that zone 2. So how he got to his zone 2 was based probably on this metabolic shift of going from. So we've got 2 different types of fuels, main fuels really, fatty acids and glucose. We've probably touched on these before, and they oxidize or burn in different muscle fibers. So when we talk about slow and fast twitch muscle fibers, it's not how they fire, it's the fuel that they use, if that makes sense. It's the speed at which they fatigue, not how they fire, right?
You sort of got like your explosive ones and then your endurance ones, essentially.
Yes, yeah. So each of those are burning different fuels. So at any one time, we're burning a certain amount of fuel. At the moment, it might be more, we're just sort of conversing. It might be 80% fatty acids, 20% glucose. When we're moving between those zones and the muscles are requiring different energy to fire, so we've got our slow and fast twitch muscle fibers, and our fast twitch can be divided into type 1A, type 2B. Sometimes they call them 2Z, I think. When we're moving to the different muscles that need to be used, we're utilizing different percentages of those fats and glucose burning. So you can probably think of glucose as a fast burn, sort of your unleaded fuel. Attia probably talked about that because he's big on driving and Formula One and whatnot. So, glucose is your fast burn, unleaded type fuel. Fatty acids is your slow burn, like your diesel fuel. So when we're switching between those zones, between those fuel systems, that's when those zones kick over. So I would assume that Attia has done all the sports science and knows exactly when his metabolic shift from zone 2 to zone 3 is, when he's burning, and they, like I said, they call it the fat burning zone. So when you are burning more fatty acid than glucose. Would that be?
I'd probably just add to that it's also whether or not it's aerobic or anaerobic. That's probably the shift. So when you're in zone 2, you're certainly using, like you said, a combination of carbohydrates and fats, and you're using them in addition with oxygen.
Yep.
So it's aerobic exercise.
Aerobic is with oxygen, and anaerobic is without oxygen.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we've got like these different energy cycles, and I don't want to go into it because it'll get too sciencey, but
I'm loving it.
So basically, your zone 2 energy levels are met by your fat and O2, and then once you increase that level, your ATP or your energy requirements are met by carbs and then creatine phosphate as you get more intense.
Yep, and they all do use oxygen. So even the anaerobic system uses oxygen, which is
much less. You get heaps less ATP out of it.
Yeah,
it's a really inefficient way, and your lactate levels rise, and that's why you can't maintain it. So.
Yeah. So in zone 1, say like our warm-up zone, we're using minimal muscle fiber stimulation, using mainly fat, probably about 70%, say walking. It varies for, trained athletes. But if you're looking at a sub 210 marathoner, their zones are going to be different to sort of a weekend warrior who's just running around. Zone 2, we're moving to that sort of the stimulation of the slow twitch muscle fibers to their fullest, and that oxidizes our highest amount of fat. Mitochondria are producing sort of the maximal amount of aerobic conditions they can before they transition to less fat, more glucose burning in our zone 3.
And on the mitochondria, the fact I read was that the slow twitch fibers have a greater density of mitochondria.
Yep.
So therefore, exercising in this zone and utilizing more mitochondrial cell function is more advantageous because there are more mitochondria in your slow twitch.
So that's one of the big benefits, probably the biggest benefit of the zone 2 is the increased number and efficiency of your mitochondria.
Yeah.
So
because there are more there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The mitochondria are at the little powerhouses. I think we talked about that a couple of episodes back. Smithy was talking about that one.
The mitochondria health and function was a big one in the longevity sphere too, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's why this zone 2 ties in so well with longevity, isn't it? Like if you want to grow more mitochondria, so have more little things in your cells that make energy, do zone 2.
Yeah,
zone 2 is proven to make you grow more mitochondria. So really good for aging, and also because it's low impact. Obviously, it's good for elderly people. You're not going out there and getting max heart rate and really stressing your system. So.
Overweight people.
And I think,
exactly. Yeah.
I think that's why it works for endurance athletes, because stimulating the mitochondria to produce more ATP, adenosine triphosphate, means that there's more mitochondria, meaning more ATP, meaning more energy.
It basically means that they can stay in the aerobic state for much longer.
Yep.
So they can put out much more sort of watts per kilo and still stay aerobic. And the benefit of that is that it's a much more efficient way of burning fuel. It's something like the difference is, I think if you're just glycolytic and anaerobic, you're getting like 2 ATP out of a molecule. And if you go through the full chain, you're getting something like 32 or 34. So the difference in the amount of ATP, this energy currency, is massive.
Yep.
So if you want to be really efficient, you want to stay in that aerobic for as long as possible. And then also your lactate levels aren't rising, so you're not going to hit that wall, so to speak.
Yep.
So that's what must be why they spend so much time in it.
Yeah. So it makes our mitochondria more efficient to burn fat. Other benefits, we're getting that increased in cardiovascular endurance. Heart's got to pump blood around, it's more of a blood workout, gets the blood moving around the body. Improves our NEAT. So NEAT is non-exercise. I'll come back to it. It is the area where we're non-exercise. So when we're not exercising, when we're utilizing sort of extra movement that we're doing that's not exercise, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, fat burning just on its own, your body is tapping into fat stores more efficiently at that pace and at that duration.
Yeah.
So if anyone's looking for trimming down a little bit of body fat, some zone 2 3 times a week at a minimum of 45 minutes, just a real brisk walk like you're in a hurry, you will notice a bit of a strip of body fat within, I reckon, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, obviously depending on how much you're already carrying. But I've noticed, and I think I mentioned in an earlier podcast, some kickboxing fighters were doing this sort of training before their weigh-ins to trim right down and obviously taper back a little bit their hard training before the fight. And the benefits of this in the fat loss and trimming right down was phenomenal. And I've tried it, and I recommend anyone 45 minutes 3 times a week, walking like you're in a hurry to catch a train, but you can still breathe out through your nose and speak. You will see the benefits of fat loss.
Yep. And that NEAT I was talking about, sorry, I missed that. I'm going to get back to it.
Yeah, sure.
Non-exercise activity thermogenesis.
Ooh.
Yeah. So that's all the activity that you do that is not exercise.
Right.
Eating, moving around, mowing the lawn.
Yep.
Sweeping up, that kind of thing.
Yep. That's neat.
That's neat. But all of everything is movement really, chewing, it's movement. So that kind of thing improves the efficiency to get blood around the body to do those kind of things, which means everyday life, if we talk about longevity, being able to do those things for as long as possible is probably the goal of...
As well as exercise.
Yeah. So maybe we should move on to the dosage. What you just talked about there, the fighters cutting weight and minimal effective doses for people.
Before we move on, Mick, have you got anything else to add?
No, I guess, what we're always trying to do, guys, is revert this back to sort of the average punter and ancestral living and all that sort of thing. And I did stumble upon one particular study that sort of summarises all of that stuff. It was actually I was looking at a heap of Huberman stuff, who is someone we sort of all seem to follow. And there was a health symposium done by Stanford Med showing how effective this Zone 2 cardiovascular exercise was in sustaining health and improving longevity and all of that sort of thing. And one really interesting, counteraction to that study was that for those people who were sedentary or sitting for around 5 hours a day, the benefits of Zone 2 cardio were completely eradicated.
Yeah, I saw this one. This is really good. Yeah, carry on. Sorry. Yep.
Yeah. So I think it's just really important for us. And now, what they went on to sort of articulate is that a solution to that issue for people who are, maybe more office bound and had spent a long periods of time sitting, is that if you stood at a ratio of 1-to-1 while you were working, and still conducted your, they say up to 180 minutes a week of Zone 2 cardiovascular work, that would counteract that issue of sitting if you could sit to stand at a 1-to-1 ratio. But for those who are sedentary, I think it's really important just to acknowledge and articulate that you're not going to get the same results. You're not going to get the same effectiveness if you are in a sedentary based, office-based job or something like that. Even if you're a student where you're sitting down for sort of around that 5 hours a day, and if you're looking to, work towards a more effective cardiovascular range or improving your health. It's not just as simple as doing the Zone 2 work. You've also got to make sure that you're less sedentary through the day. Otherwise, you're just counteracting all of the hard work you're doing.
Yeah, good point, Mick.
Yeah.
And back on that point of the ancestral living, ancestral man would have spent a lot of time in Zone 2.
I reckon, yeah.
Wouldn't he?
Yep.
A lot of walking, a lot of very, very slow jogging, try to conserve his energy for a burst of energy at some stage where he needed it.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I think the other thing just to acknowledge there is there are environmental factors that can affect the range in Zone 2. So things like temperature. So, you could go for an easy conversational based jog with on your own or a walk first thing in the morning, nice and cool, and your heart rate would be, in Zone 2. Whereas comparatively, you could go and run or walk at the exact same pace in the heat of the day. And just because of that environmental stress, that could be something that stimulates someone from Zone 2 into Zone 3 or Zone 4. So that's why I think the heart rate strap, as a tool to effectively measure your zoning is really, really good. But, and just being conscious of those factors and maybe if you are used to running and being in Zone 2, at different times of the day, you might need to run slightly easier in order to achieve the same Zone 2 output, or you might need to pull right back to a walk.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that study you're referring to is pretty good. I think it was, they talked about 180 minutes per week. So whether that looks like 4 times 45 minutes a week, so if we talk about sort of minimal effective doses, sort of for the punter to take away today. Yeah. I mean, you could get really scientific about it. You could work out, like probably Peter Attia does, his exact zone of when he's moving from Zone 2 to Zone 3. You could take it as a conversational pace, 45-minute walk, run, swim, bike ride, row, maybe whatever it might be. But yeah, so Ingo San Milan, who he was talking to. I think he was talking to Peter Attia.
To say.
Yeah,
it's a mouthful.
Yeah, he also said don't let perfect be the enemy of good. So if you're getting something done, and like you were talking about, Mick, they're getting up and standing rather than standing rather than sitting, walking rather than getting in the car, those kind of things, that's better than doing nothing at all. And I don't know, was it in that study that it mentioned if you did an hour to an hour and a half for pre-diabetics can alleviate diabetes?
Oh, it's got massive implications for blood sugar control.
Yeah.
So if you look at insulin sensitivity and your average blood glucose level, if you're including zone 2, it's an absolute game changer. Like if you're pre-diabetic or a type 2 diabetic, zone 2 is going to massively increase your insulin sensitivity, which is huge. I mean, that's the whole name of the game. So
we're not doctors. We're not suggesting that we can prescribe zone 2 cardio and alleviates your diabetes or your pre-diabetes. But this is what some of the literature is saying: it is that profound.
Yeah. I think the devil is just in the detail. You have to do you can't do 20 minutes of it. It's not going to get you much. I think the minimum that they're sort of talking about is like a 45-minute to a 1 hour session.
Yep.
And you're needing to do it sort of 3 or 4 times a week. If you want to just do, 3 10-minute sessions or something like that, you're probably not going to get the benefits because you need that, because it is a lower intensity exercise. You need that sort of longer duration.
Yeah.
But if you look at the evidence and the studies behind people doing the correct amount, so let's say like at least 4 lots of 45 minutes.
Yep.
Insulin sensitivity and blood sugar is like massively improved.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it is something that you can incorporate into your bodybuilding program or your weights program or like that, because it's not demanding.
Yeah.
And you are still. I mean, even replace it for one of your HIIT sessions or your strength sessions, just to break up your training regime.
Yeah.
You are still, and as we said before, it's deceptively easy. That's why people avoid it, because they think they're not working hard enough. But you really are. For 45 minutes to an hour, your legs are getting a great workout. Your ticker is you're burning calories, burning fat. And you can add it to your strength or HIIT training protocols.
Yeah, I think a lot of it got poo-pooed initially from that strength training crowd, being, you always want to be making gains. You want to be sort of catabolic, anabolic. Yep. So you don't want to be walking or there was that theory that if you did too much cardio, you'll lose muscle mass. But it's not really about that in zone 2. We're looking at a fat burning zone.
Yeah.
So strength training guys can definitely utilize it if they want to get lean.
Yeah.
We might have a guest on the podcast in the future that's going to talk about sort of bodybuilding and prep competitions, and it'd be interesting to see what they kind of think about having or utilizing zone 2. Do they do that these days? Is that something that they do, or is that something that can be utilized? And you're talking about fighters using it for stripping weight. It's perfect for that, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, they're not losing strength before a fight.
Yeah. I guess it's really great for the plateau of weight loss too. So if you are looking to lose weight, or you have lost weight, you probably can't do that from diet alone. The old calories in, calories out thermodynamics works. There's nuances and whatnot, but if you're plateauing, you've wanted to lose weight, you get, say, I'm 20 kilos overweight, I want to lose 20 kilos, and you've done that diet alone, you've lost 10, 15 maybe, you can't lose the last 5. I think zone 2 cardio is where we can increase the dose and frequency, and if we're getting up to those 180 minutes, maybe it's 3 times 60 minutes a week or 4 times 45 minutes a week, that has huge benefits for weight loss as well.
Well, it burns a lot of calories. Like I did one on the bike the other day for 45 minutes, and I was only sort of pushing 170 or 180 watts, and it burned like 450 calories in 45 minutes.
And that's huge.
That's a lot of calories.
I was there when you did that, and that was in comparison to a HIIT session that we did a couple of weeks earlier. It was quite a demanding session, and we hit 360 calories in that HIIT session. And so you're just saying that you've hit 450 on a bike for how long?
With you and kicking along, only 45 minutes.
45 minutes.
Yeah, and I was chatting the whole time.
Yeah,
sort of very light sweat, but definitely wasn't cooked afterwards. I was just I was outdoors. I was on a stationary bike, but outside, and
that's what I love about it.
And that's the thing.
It was good.
Yeah, and you mental. We've talked about a lot about physical health here, but the mental benefits of Zone 2, and just like if you're on your own, chucking some headphones on and zoning out to a podcast or some new music while you're walking along, or even just getting rid of the headphones and just getting in tune with your own inner thoughts, gives your head space a little bit of time to put things in perspective. And then what if you're doing it with your partner or something like that? And because it is, you are required to have, to measure it by discussion. Is a great measuring tool of that zone. What a great way to just get with your partner or a friend and chat while you're working out.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you're doing that 4 times a week and you burn, say, 450 calories times 4 a week, what's that, 1,800 calories, that's a game changer for weight loss. That is absolutely going to burn fat and help you lose weight.
Yeah. Without delving into any muscle stores.
No.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I guess that's why experts are talking about it being a game changer. Yeah.
Nice.
That's probably a good one. Good way to tidy it
up. Oh, it's such a benefit, and a lot of people ignore it, I guess.
Yeah. Probably because it was too easy.
Yeah.
The strength guys poo-pooed it because you'd lose the muscle gains that you've got, which is a fallacy. Yeah. Oh, it's too easy. You're not going hard enough. You got to go. And maybe an episode on Zone 5 cardio is worth doing.
Yeah.
5, 6. That's super maximal intensity. But it seems that the longevity benefits of Zone 2 cardio, weight loss, pre-diabetes, and improving race times for endurance athletes and whatnot. Yeah.
What a great opportunity to maybe go back on the barefoot concept, barefoot training.
Yeah.
Get some minimalistic shoes to walk in.
You can imagine the resistance in sand along the beach, barefoot, grounding.
Yeah.
Vitamin D.
45 to an hour walk along the beach.
Boom.
Man, imagine a doctor's prescribed that to you for your pre-diabetes. Oh yeah, I could probably sort that out. Maybe eat a little bit less sugar.
Does it mean I have to get out of bed?
Yeah.
Too early. Yeah.
I think once people form the habit, they'd bloody love it.
Oh yeah.
You'd get addicted to it.
Yeah.
You live close to the beach, and you could just sort of step out your door and be there within 5 or 10 minutes.
Yep.
Or otherwise at park or nature or anywhere. Just
Yep.
Imagine a doctor prescribe that for your mental health.
Yeah. Stress management. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or relationship building.
Yeah.
Have a chat with your wife for 45 minutes while you walk.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, that'd do my head in. Not really.
Nah. Well, on that note, it'd be great to hear from people about Zone 2 cardio, anything.
Yeah. If anyone does it, let us know what they do.
Yeah. Get in touch. We've got our Instagram. We'll put a couple of little spots up there.
I'd love to see some comments on the Instagram post. If anyone can just give us a quick little comment on the Instagram post, that'd be cool.
Yeah. And then, get in touch.
And also, if you are an athlete and you're after any of the testing that we were talking about in the way of running testing or riding testing or anything like that, hit us up as well. We can assist people in getting those accurate zones, so they know that they're working within data that's specific to themselves.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think we probably need to reach out and interact a bit more, get people. Yeah, we can answer questions. That's a really good idea. Yeah. Yeah. Modern Ancestral Man at gmail.com. Modern Ancestral Man on the Instagram. So the kids say it, I think, the Instagrams. So, get on there. Check us out. Yeah, flick us some messages. It'd be great to hear and interact with the listeners. So,
yeah cool. Good to see you boys again.
Yeah, great stuff. I think it was a really good chat. Hopefully we didn't get too sciencey or whatnot. But, really, takeaway is get out and do some Zone 2 cardio, work out with a buddy.
Yep.
Have a nice little conversation for an hour 3 times a week.
Boom.
Done. Good stuff, guys. We'll see you next week.
Get your air guitars ready.
Gotcha.